Let me ask you, you have addressed a lot of these complaints about past writings that were at least under your name, but that you said you had no knowledge of and didn't write. But there was one thing that caught my eye when I was looking through some of the briefing books, and it was something that was in the Congressional Record, that you inserted into the Congressional Record from June of 2004. And I wanted to talk to you about it. You said, contrary to the claims of the supporters of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the act did not improve race relations or enhance freedom. Instead, the forced integration dictated by the Civil Rights Act of 1964 increased racial tensions while diminishing individual liberty. So my question to you is, whose individual liberty did it diminish, and do you think the country would have been better off in terms of race relations without the Civil Rights Act of 1964?
Well, we could have done it in a better way, because the Jim Crow laws obviously had to get rid of, and we're all better off for that, and that is an important issue, so I strongly supported that. What you don't want to do is undermine the concept of liberty in that process. And what they did in that bill was they destroyed the principle of private property and private choices. So if you do this, all civil liberties are protected by property rights, whether it's your TV stations, that's a piece of property, whether it's a newspaper, whether it's a church building, or whether it's the bedroom. This is something that people don't quite understand, that civil liberties aren't divorced from property. So if you try to improve relationships by forcing and telling people what they can do, and you ignore and undermine the principles of liberty, then the government can come into our bedrooms, and that's exactly what has happened. Look at what's happened with the Patriot Act. They can come into our houses, our bedrooms, our businesses, and so the principle of private property has been undermined, and it was started back then. But they can't twist that and say that I was against or favored Jim Crow laws or anything else. I mean, it's the government that causes so much of the racial tensions when you look at anything from slavery on down to segregation in the military and the Jim Crow laws. And right now, the real problem we face today is the discrimination in our court system, the war on drugs. Just think of how biased that is against the minorities. They go into prison much way out of proportion to their numbers. They get the death penalty out of proportion to their numbers. And if you look at what minorities suffer in ordinary wars, whether there's a draft or no draft, they suffer much more out of proportion. So those are the kind of things of discrimination that have to be dealt with, but you don't ever want to undermine the principle of private property and private choices. In order to solve some of these problems, you need to repeal the very, very bad laws that governments have propagated over the many centuries, because it is the government so often that institutionalized segregation and slavery and all the other things. So the understanding of private property would solve our problems, and we indeed need to look at the war on drugs if anybody cares about the abuse of our civil liberties and the abuse of minorities in the court system.